What is up, everybody? It is Kovaz back again, and this time with a Everbloom run with the commentary over gameplay. Get some tips, tricks in there. Read it kind of like a guide. There are a couple of different pulls you can do at the start of the dungeon here. You can either get this first pack and then go off to the right, or get the first pack and go off to the left. Only real difference is what you're going to be fighting and how cooldowns potentially time up later. Just with the route that we're going with, we want to be killing off to the right first for cooldown timing. Always hero this first pack. Tyrannical, fortified, doesn't matter. You're always heroing this first big pack that you're doing. If you go off to the right, like we do here, you want to be focusing the abomination down, especially during bolstering weeks. That one needs to die. This one is tyrannical, but regardless, you want to be killing that. Other things to look out for while you're doing this pack is the berserkers. They have a leap that they do right there. You can see it is dodgeable, especially if you're tracking the cooldown. And if you don't dodge it on higher fortified keys or on bolstering week, it is going to one-shot you. So make sure that you're tracking the cooldown of those berserkers one way or the other. And then you can either be moving when they're about to be jumping on you, or you can CC and it'll reset the cooldown on their leap. A really good use for binding shot is when multiple leaps are going to be going out at the same time. And when they do leap, they will interrupt the damage that they do at the end by getting stunned. Similar mobs on this side are the stingers. They can be treated the exact same way as the berserkers. They will leap. If you don't dodge it, you'll get that green circle around you. It needs to get dispelled. It's a dot. It's big damage. It will one-shot you on super high fortified or especially bolstering. Unfortunately, just like the Atoll Bizarre video that just came out, if you haven't seen that yet, highly recommend you watch it. But this run was on that same night, which means that I was in the middle of changing things about my UI when I was asked to do keys, and I'm obviously going to say yes because I like doing keys. So my nameplates especially are not as easily read as they could be. There are cooldowns being tracked that shouldn't necessarily be tracked, and then I was also going to hide certain nameplates that I just don't need to worry about, like the dread petals, because you don't want your nameplates to be stacking. If they're stacking, you can't see cast bars. So you should have them overlapping, right? Problem with overlapping nameplates is when they get to the top of your screen there, they're going to stack regardless. And so if you don't hide things like spiteful shade nameplates, like dread petal nameplates, you aren't going to be able to easily see the cooldowns and cast times of the important stuff to watch. So it was really difficult in this dungeon, at least for me, to be watching the cooldown on the stinger leap and the berserker leaps because I couldn't even see the nameplates. It is really important to have a clean UI for this reason. Obviously you want the extra information, so it's a good thing that I downloaded the pack to show the cooldowns on these nameplates, and it's a good thing that I did set my nameplates to not be stacking, but instead overlapping, or sorry, to be stacking vertically instead of overlapping. Not sure what I said earlier, but you want them to be stacking such that you can see them. If they're overlapping, you can't see anything on these bigger pulls. But it's a good thing that I did make that change. I just did not finish implementing those changes. So in the interim, it is kind of actively hurting me in this dungeon. But in the long term, when I actually get all of the little things ironed out, it will be beneficial. So for me, at least, going into these packs, it's really important that I target one of them before they're all stacked up, and then I focus another one. The reason that's important is because my target, I can always see the cast on, and then my focus, I can always see the cast on, and I can interrupt each of them with a different keybind. So just adapting to the current dungeon, that's something that's really important to do. Not always important to do if you can very easily just see the casts as they're going off because there aren't nameplates everywhere. Although, especially on packs like the one coming up, where everything has casts that you need to watch out for, it's important to target one and focus another. So right here, you can see that I am targeting yellow or star, and then my focus target is on purple or diamond. And that way I can be watching, and if I need to like kick or intimidate or trap one of them, I have separate keybinds for my target and my focus, and I could very easily be stopping 2 different mobs at once. Things to watch out for in these packs are the Choking Thorns cast from the Naturalists, and then the heal from the Menders. The Choking Thorns is a cast and then a channel. The person that it's on gets stunned and they take damage. You can use any type of ability that'll stun or to break stuns, like the Human Racial or Bubble, Icebound Fortitude, stuff like that, to get out of it. And like right here, you can see I use my Human Racial to get out of this one. The healer can also dispel it, or someone can kick the channel. So there are multiple ways to deal with it. You can also just kick the cast before it even stuns somebody, and it will go on cooldown. But that's a really important thing to watch out for, especially on the packs earlier in the dungeon where you have a Naturalist and then either Berserkers or the Stingers. Reason being, let's say I'm out in range, I'm trying to dodge the Zerkers or the Stingers on their jumps, and a Choking Vine cast goes off. I'm stunned, I can't use defensives, I can't move, and it's a really easy way for someone to die, is if they get stunned, there's no counterplay, and then a Zerker jumps on them and is spinning, and they just die. It is a tyrannical week, and so we know this boss is going to take a really long time, and so that's why we pull the Dread Petals into it, so that we're getting some percent while we're doing the boss. I think it's worth doing even on Fortified, but do be careful recommending this to your group, because these Dread Petals do slow your tank. They have a stacking debuff that slows to the point that he almost can't move, and he does have a frontal on this boss that he has to deal with. So we have a prot pally. He can either bubble it, or he can freedom himself to get rid of the stacks right before he needs to move, or he can call for the Tiger's Lust from our Mistweaver Monk to, again, remove those stacks. So if you don't have a healer that can help out your tank, and you have like a Vengeance Demon Hunter that has no way to remove the stacks, this might not be the best strat for your group. If no one else can do it, you can also pull a Cunning Pet out, and you can freedom your tank. You do give up a wall, or not a wall, but the extra HP from the tank pet. But on this boss, you don't really need it. There's no unavoidable damage that comes out for us, so if you have to use your Fortitude of the Bear, it's because you misplayed. But just having your Cunning Pet freedom is not enough for the tank. They would also have to have something else. So it can be like me doing that, and then a Mistweaver rotating our freedoms on the tank. If it's a Vengeance Demon Hunter, they can't do it themselves. Something similar. Or like if our healer has no way to help the tank out, but it's a prot pally so he can freedom himself. Again, it's 2 freedoms, you can rotate between them. You need at least 2 in the group for this strat to work. This boss is super simple. Ranged players get targeted by these fixations that are roots that come out of the boss, and then whenever they touch you, they have these roots that spawn on the ground. And then when you're in the intermission, all those orbs that come into the boss, if they run over these roots, it makes an add. If it doesn't run over the roots and it makes it into the boss, then it gives the boss energy, and when that boss gets full energy, the phase ends. The reason you want to build a wall like we are here with these roots is to get as many of those orbs as possible, because sure, it spawns adds that you have to deal with, but as long as those orbs aren't making it into the boss, the intermission goes longer, and during that whole intermission, the boss is taking extra damage. So ideally what you do is you get 1 row across with the roots here. You can see the fixate goes out, the yellow arrow is on the Warlock, and he's going to make a wall. You want to do your best before the intermission to make a big wall, and then during the intermission, what you need to be doing is looking at where the orbs are coming from, and then placing your stuff where the orbs are going to be. Because obviously when the intermission isn't going, you can't know where these orbs are going to spawn from. It's not a set pattern. But then during the intermission, you need to make sure that, like, if there are 3 that are just back to back to back in the same place, and you make a perfect wall, well, guess what? The first one's going to break that wall, and then the next 2 are going to get through. They're going to touch the boss. So right here, I can see that these orbs just cleared this whole area, and so I'm going to put my plant right there. And then you can see 2 on the left are going to pop those 2 roots. So this next set, I should at least have popped that one off to the left, but I did see 2 orbs coming in, so it makes no real difference, because where I placed that was still going to get an orb regardless. Essentially, you want to... That was just a really bad placement. That one I should have put in front of the one that's about to touch the boss right here. That was just a misplay. But essentially, if you do this correctly, you want to have it such that as the intermission ends, you have no roots on the ground. Because if there are no roots on the ground, you can't stay in the intermission forever. It means that every root was useful. So, you know, if you're looking back and it's like, wow, I feel like we weren't in the intermission for very long at all. I feel like we could have done a lot more boss damage. If you had roots left over at the end of the intermission, yeah, you should have done better. If you didn't, then it's just the way the fight's going to work, and you were in that intermission as long as you could have. So right here, you can see that my focus target is the naturalist, because that's the one that does the choking thorns, and I want to make sure that I'm kicking that. The choking vines here, there are 2 of them in this pack, and you can see one going off. It gets AoE stopped. The reason being, we have 3 berserkers in this pack, and if that choking thorns cast is on somebody, as all of these 3 leaps back to back to back come off here, you can see I dodge. There's another one, and there's another one I don't dodge. If that choking vine cast overlaps with those, and you're stunned and you can't move when multiple Zerkers are leaping only 1 second apart, you can see the cooldown I'm tracking with the WeakAuras there. There are about to be 3 leaps going off, except they die, so it's only 2. Someone's gonna die. Or especially during spiteful as well. If there's a choking vines cast and a spiteful is just smacking on the person, they're dead. It's a really, really high priority kick. And again, always make sure that you are targeting the A-bomb during all these. The group damage that goes out is significant, and he also has the most health, so it's the most efficient mob to cleave off of, especially on bolstering weeks. This pack isn't dangerous. It's just a bunch of dread petals and 1 berserker. Realistically, we probably should have pulled this with the next pack, because sure, it's a bunch of mobs, but they're not dangerous. There's plenty of counterplay to the Zerker, and the dread petals do next to nothing. So just as far as being efficient goes, you do have to sometimes play a little bit more dangerously in order to time the dungeon, obviously, especially as you get higher up. So here, I'm tracking the leap casts, and I really should be doing better. None of these should hit me. Every time I get hit by one of those leaps is an example of a misplay, right? During bolstering week, you would not do the pull we just did, where you pull that A-bomb in as things are dying, but it's not bolstering, so we don't really care. We just see the pat is in a good spot, and we're like, okay, cool. The A-bomb's coming in. Let's make sure that we're, main targeting that one. I should be using cooldowns here. Yep, okay, good. We do have the boss coming up, but if I didn't use cooldowns here, this pack would take longer, and I would be essentially sitting on cooldowns for probably a full minute. And you do that twice, you miss a whole set of cooldowns over the course of the dungeon. It adds up. It can be significant. I did still get the full use of my cooldowns here. If the pack was going to die in the next 10 seconds, save it for the boss, because you don't get the full use, and you're not going to be holding it as long, right? Different routes have different mobs in it, obviously. The route we like skips all these mobs off to the right, as well as this last A-bomb up here. We have a warlock, so you can just use the gateway. I'm not used to playing with a warlock. I always just save camo to walk by here. And we're right into the second boss. This boss is one of the bosses that gives most pugs trouble. Thankfully, we have a prot pally, which makes this a lot easier. And another thing that makes this a lot easier is a warlock, which we have. And the final thing that makes this a lot easier is an Aug Evoker, which we do not have. The reason the Aug Evoker helps so much is because the correct strategy on this boss is to just kill Earthshaper Telu first. And so the way this boss works is one of these 3 ads is going to be rotating, casting just a big channel. And then the other caster ad is going to be active. And Dulhu, the big guy, is just always active. So what we should do is you just focus down one of the casters. And then once that's dead, the fight is so much easier. But what that means is the guy that you're not on is going to be casting. And a lot of those casts are going to get out. It's either going to be Nature's Wrath or the Water Bolt, right? The reason a Warlock makes this so much easier is because he can curse the mobs, and their cast time is longer. The reason a Prot Pally makes this easier is because it is just a tank with so many kicks. It's insane. Makes it a lot easier. And then
3, 2, 1.
Yep, so right here you can see we're killing this final boss. I had my cooldowns come up. You do want to use them when Dulhu is stacked with one of the mobs, because you get free cleave when you use your cooldowns. And then since we've killed one of the casters, the fight is much simpler. There's way less damage going out. It's much more predictable damage because you're not going to have a mob that you're not targeting, like randomly hitting you with a water bolt. And if you're not looking for it and seeing that you're targeted, it can go at a bad time and it'll just kill you.
3,
So you can see that
2,
a lot of my
1.
defensives are on cooldown because I was watching the water bolt casts and seeing if they were on me, and I would pop something preemptively. One other thing on this boss to be mindful of is when Dulhu charges, it's going to be at the tank, and then
3,
big green circles are going to come
2,
out. So you can see
1.
right here, I try to stack with the Warlock and Mistweaver so that all of our circles are in one spot. If you're melee, it is really important that you leave melee, because while these circles do gradually get smaller over time, it will very
3,
quickly turn into a
2,
shit show if you're
1.
not moving out. So right here, you can see the charges going out. I stack with the Warlock, and then essentially we only have 1 circle's worth of bad space instead of 2. Doesn't have to be done perfectly, but you do need to make sure that melee have a space around the boss, because they need to be able to get
3,
out with their charges.
2,
And you can
1.
see here, stacking with the Warlock again right before it comes out, and then moving. But you need to make sure that melee constantly have enough space, otherwise you're going to wipe on this boss because you essentially inted your group. I recommend when it's just the 2 mobs left, killing them at the same time.
3,
Reason being,
2,
hitting 2 mobs
1.
is more efficient than hitting 1 as far as damage goes. So Dulhu does have a lot more HP. And so when you're on that last mob, I recommend focusing Dulhu and then cleaving the mob so that they die at the same time. Definitely at the start of the fight,
3,
though, your main
2,
target is one of the casters
1.
because we want one of those to be dead just quickly. But after that, you're just playing for time. And right here, it's a lot of wasted time because it's single target instead of cleave. But that's pretty much it for this boss. Not especially difficult, depending on your group comp and how well coordinated you are. But especially in pugs, that boss can be a killer. Especially on high tyrannical, which this isn't especially high, but it is tyrannical. And so there's a lot of damage going out here. This next area, the hapless assistance, from our point of view, you don't have to worry about. You do have to worry if you're the tank. They do kind of truck, and then make sure that you're not getting targeted by the fungal fists if like your tank is kiting and you're a melee. Just be aware of that. The mobs in this area that you have to watch out for are any of the casters. All of the casters have the same mechanics as the boss, just depending on the spell school. So like if it's a pyromancer, it's going to be casting the pyroblasts, and it's going to be doing the big fire AoE. You have to watch out for that. It's dangerous. If it's the Arcanomancer, like the one we're about to kill, it's the same mechanic as the boss. There's Arcane Blast, and then it will also send the orb at whoever is furthest, just like on the boss. So right here, you can see that I'm making sure I'm standing far away from our group so that that orb right there does not hit the group. If you're in that when it hits, you die. Other than that, you're just kicking the Arcane Blasts. And then finally, the Frost Mages is just Frost Bolts, and then they have the ice that pops out of you, and it's orbs that converge, and if you get hit, you're stunned. So here it's honestly a pretty good dungeon design. You see each of them alone, right? As a mob, you can pull them alone here as you're doing trash. And then the little event before the boss, you have to deal with all of them at the same time. And then during the boss, you are dealing with all of them at the same time from the boss, just hitting harder. So right here, you can see I'm trying my best to get far because there's about to have that come out. If you're in melee when that arcane orb comes out, it's going to hit instantly and it's going to kill everybody. I have accidentally done that before. It's no good. Just make sure when you're doing this pack that you are rotating kicks. So like right here, myself and the Mistweaver are rotating kicks on star. And then since we have the Warlock cursing, the shaman can get 1 on his own and the prot pally can get 1 on his own. But even without a Warlock, it's totally doable. You just rotate kicks. I recommend focusing down the Pyromancer because that AoE damage is pretty significant. And then once he's dead, you just kill whichever one has the lowest health next. I think ideally the Arcane one is the least dangerous. So if you can choose, it would be Fire, then Frost, then Arcane that you kill. And I barely squeeze out there. Very tight. And then on the boss, it's going to be all of these things. You're going to have 2 mechanics overlapping at the same time. So it's either going to be Fire plus Frost, like you get right here, or it's going to be Fire plus Arcane, or it's going to be Arcane plus Frost. So what happens right there is no good. You always want to have a cooldown popped when the fire is coming out from the boss. Reason being, it shoots 16 firebolts, essentially, right? who those firebolts hit is not predetermined, and it is not evenly distributed. And so it can be that of those 16 bolts, like I get 5 and someone else only gets 1. And if you get hit by 5 of those bolts and you don't pop something big, you're dead. And the thing is, you can't know at the start whether you're going to get hit by 1 or you're going to get hit by 5 or you're going to get hit by 3. And so essentially you just need to make sure that you have something up every time, period. Because like, let's say I'm using my wall, my 40% wall, survival of the fittest is what's going to be up. If I wait until the first 3 hit me before I use it, and then I just use it for the last 2, I'm using that cooldown, and then I'm dying anyway, because I didn't have the damage reduction for the bigger ones. So make sure whenever fire is coming out that you have plans. So right here, you can't hear the comms, but we're communicating. So like my shaman just said for that one, like, hey, I have nothing. I need Blessing of Sacrifice from the paladin. And I was like, hey, like I only have turtle for this one. Let's use the shorter cooldown life cocoon. It's only, you know, a minute some odd cooldown. And so he life cocoons me instead. So different combos. The only one that you really have to worry about is how you're going to deal with the fire. If you don't have any other cooldowns, what you can also do is just what I did there. And the second you get hit by the first one, you use the heal. So like right there, the second I got hit by the first one, I use Exil. If I get hit by another one, I'm using a health potion. If I get hit by another one, I'm using a lock rock, because I just want to make sure that I'm not dying. If you have something like your Fortitude of the Bear or Survival of the Fittest, you don't have to necessarily heal between each one. But yeah, the boss just rotates. It's going to be different versions of combinations of those same 3 spells. So the fire one here is dangerous. The arcane one is not especially dangerous. It's just going to go on the furthest person. And then on the boss, it also pulls everybody towards it. So you do have to keep an eye out during the arcane one, because if it is arcane plus fire, if you are not aware of your surroundings, the arcane can pull you back through the fire puddles, and that'll kill you. Or if it's arcane plus frost, it can pull you into those frost orbs that will freeze you. And again, that's pretty dangerous. You could die. A pretty safe one, I think, is arcane plus frost. That's the one that it's just a mechanics check of like movement, but there's not necessarily damage coming out. So like here, you should never have to use a defensive, because you see where that's going to go, and you can see where the frost circles are, and you can move such that when you do get pulled, it won't pull you into the frost circles. I think the most dangerous one is arcane plus fire, because if you get pulled into the fire from the arcane as more fire is coming out, you're going to die. Arcane plus frost is right in the middle there. You can still get pulled into the frost tomb if you're not careful, but you know, if you're human, you can human it to get out of the stun. Or, you know, your healer can help you. There are different options. It's not necessarily an insta-death. Right here, we have hero coming up. We're going into the last boss. It's looking pretty good. We're just finishing off our last percent. The last boss is pretty simple, but it is also pretty dangerous. As long as you have a plan for the very predictable damage that comes out, you're fine. If you go in without a plan, you're gonna die. So the only part of this boss that is especially dangerous is when the boss does a frontal cleave while the ad is out, the big tree ad. Reason being, that cleave, you can see it just hit. It did like 70% of my health. When that tree ad is out, you are also taking damage from the tree. It's just doing like pulsing AoE to the group. So if you don't have a defensive for that big smash that's about to come out here, bada boom, you can see it does, 65% of my health with no cooldowns on me. So if I'm below, like if I have 35% health missing, I die. So here's the ad that comes out. You do have to focus it when it comes out. You can see that we're taking constant AoE damage from the ad. It comes out there. And then right there, that's the combo of boss smash plus triad being out. So I use my survival of the fittest. On my next one, I'm probably planning on using Fortitude of the Bear plus Exil. On the following one, if my tank has a sack, I'm going to use that and save my turtle just in case shit goes bad. If, you know, my healer has no cocoon available and my tank has no sack available because they're being used on other people, that's when I turtle. The boss smash, when there isn't a triad out, you don't really have to worry about. It's going to do damage. It's unavoidable damage, or you should treat it as unavoidable damage because you specifically need to save your cooldowns for when this colossal blow comes out with the ad out. When there is no ad out, the boss does take increased damage, like a lot of increased damage. You can see, you know, like the shaman's doing 800k, I'm doing 700k, like big damage. there are pros and cons to how you can use your offensive cooldowns with that in mind. You can use your offensive cooldowns on the boss when there isn't an add out, because you only do increase damage to the boss when there is no add out. Or you can use your offensive cooldowns on the add, because when the add is out is the only scary part of the fight. And if the add lives too long, it's just going to keep on doing those AoE hits and you can die, right? So pros and cons, you do need the boss to die. It does take a very long time. This is tyrannical. You know, we went into this boss 2 full minutes ago and it's only at half. So, and this is a group with a lot of damage as well. Like I would expect in a lot of groups for this boss to take 5-6 minutes. So again, just depending on how tanky your group is, how things are looking, maybe you want to save some offensive cooldowns for when this Flourishing Ancient comes out. Maybe you want to use cooldowns on the boss just to make it quicker because you're tanky and you can kill the Ancient a little bit slower. Right there, you can see that I had my turtle available, but instead of using turtle, I called for a cocoon because cocoon is a shorter cooldown and we can rotate through it. And then later in the fight, if, you know, cocoon has to go to someone else who doesn't have a wall, I'm saving turtle for that oh shit moment at the end, right? Since it is such a strong defensive. And then other than that, the only thing you have to do on this boss is whenever those flower petals come out, you have to step on them. If you don't step on them within a certain amount of time, they're going to spawn an ad. Those ads do a cast, and that cast is not on the tank necessarily. They target someone random, and if you don't soak enough of them, it's too many to get kicks on reliably. Right before doing this dungeon, we were actually doing it on a 26. We were on track to time it. Things were totally fine, and we were like, hey, let's just prioritize damage into the boss. Let's not soak all these ads because we can get funnel damage by having the ads out. We have an enhancement shaman, and then prot pally also gets a little extra damage from ads. So we thought we were being super smart. It's like, it's a little bit close. Let's prioritize boss damage. We'll let these ads spawn, and then we'll maybe kill the boss a little quicker and we'll time the key. Well, turns out with those 3 ads out, we didn't have enough AoE stops, especially since incorporeal spawned at the same time. A couple of casts went out that shouldn't have from the little lashers, the toxic venom. We had to use defensives that we would not have had to use if we had just soaked the flowers and didn't have them in the first place. And then since we used those defensives when it wasn't the colossal blow plus the flourishing ancient here that comes out, we didn't have cooldowns for this combo that's about to come up right here in like 3 seconds. 1, 2, 3. Since we didn't have cooldowns for this big hit there on the 26, we wiped. It was a little heartbreaking because the dungeon was super clean up until that point, and then we just made a bad decision and it cost us the key. So here we are on a 25 instead. But you know, it's like I've said in my other videos, it's not always about IO on that key. Sometimes you have to push your limits on those keys that would give you score, and fail because of it. And then you just learn going forward, like, okay, we tried to push the limit, we found it and we went a little past it. On the next run, we will not push it quite so far. But if you don't do that, if you don't push your limits key to key to key, and then fail occasionally, testing those boundaries, then you're not going to improve. So it's okay to fail sometimes, as long as you learn from that failure, apply that learning into your future keys, and then just gradual increase over time. You're going to get better. You're going to time harder and harder keys, and your score is going to go up. And you know, that's what Mythic Plus is all about. And right here you can see 415k overall DPS. Pretty good for an Everbloom. Pretty good. We did not have an AUG Evoker. A lot of really big numbers that you'll see in Everbloom where it's like, whoa, 450k DPS. It's because they're buffed by an AUG Evoker. And if you look at the logs, you know, it's like, okay, with the AUG Evoker, 450k. Without the AUG Evoker, 380k, right? So 415 overall, super respectable. Definitely could have done better in the dungeon, but overall, pretty clean run. And I hope my commentary throughout gave you guys some things to think about the next time you do an Everbloom. And I hope it also gave some solutions going into that Everbloom. So thanks again for watching. I really appreciate it. And I will see you guys in the next one.